Welcome to Antarctica, one of the coldest and emptiest places on Earth. There are no permanent residents here, but there are plenty of penguins and sea life along the coast. A giant ice sheet covers 98% of the continent and is the largest single mass of ice on our planet. The views are magnificent. For miles, you can see ice shelves and beautiful mountain ranges. The climate is unforgiving, though. The average high at the South Pole is 57 degrees below zero. Only a small number of people dare to endure these conditions, and more than a few are Ohioans, who are here to take advantage of the awe-inspiring landscape the continent provides for scientific research and adventure. I made my way to the last unexplored frontier, Antarctica, to observe what life is like on the continent and see how Ohioans are contributing to America's scientific endeavors. It's a long flight to the bottom of the Earth. My journey started by flying more than 8,500 miles from Columbus, Ohio, all the way to Christchurch, New Zealand. Christchurch is a hub for the United States Antarctic Program and is a gateway city to the ice. Once there, the U.S. government fit me with special clothing to ensure I was prepared for the environment. 2 orange bags contain the clothes that could save my life. I had to try on everything to make sure it fit: long underwear, sweatpants, thermal socks, heavy-duty gloves, goggles, parka, ski pants, boots, and of course the balaclava. My next step will be to board the U.S. Air Force C-17 jet, equipped to land on the ice in Antarctica. The military plane will take me to McMurdo Station on the coast of the continent to observe the research Ohioans are undertaking. The flight from Christchurch to Antarctica takes about 5 hours on the C-17. There were more than 50 people aboard my flight, ranging from journalists to military from Australia and New Zealand to researchers and contractors. My anticipation is running high at this point because it's only a matter of time before I'll be stepping off this plane onto the white wilderness of Antarctica. Getting off the plane, I'm blinded by the brightness.
The one color that comes to mind in Antarctica is white. White as far as you can see, especially on cloudy days with light snow coming down, filtering out the sunshine and keeping the blue sky at bay.
A bus takes us 16 miles to McMurdo Station. All personnel and cargo going to or coming from the South Pole Station or other field camps on the continent must go through McMurdo first. The main labs are housed here, where scientists, including Ohioans, are making new discoveries each season. McMurdo Station, established in 1956, is located on the southern tip of the Ross Island, about as far south as you can travel by ship during the right time of year. It was here that one of the first Antarctic explorers set up camp.
This is where Robert Falcon Scott was able to get with his wooden ships in 1901 and 1902. When he came back in 1911 and 12 to make his push for the South Pole, he wasn't actually able to sail this far south, and that's why his main hut is up the coast about 20 miles at Cape Evans.
Scott's hut still stands today. After 1917, it remained untouched until 1956, when U.S. expeditioners dug it out of the snow and ice. The hut was found in remarkably good shape and a state of preservation. It also included many artifacts from earlier expeditions.
This is clothing that some of the original explorers wore back in 1902 and during subsequent expeditions. You have hats, there are boots, even some gloves here. This was considered state-of-the-art back during those times.
In 1956, nations with resources and interest in Antarctica came together to start exploring the continent. This laid the groundwork for future exploration and scientific research.
The U.S. government set up an establishment here to be able to help support that, and with the idea in mind that we probably would want, as a country, to have a program down here for some period of time.
At that time, development of a remote outpost was a specialty of the U.S. military. The Navy was tasked to establish a site in Antarctica. They remained active there until the early 1990s. Today, a lot has changed since the government's initial efforts.
In the middle 50s, there were perhaps 200 people here, and of course they were all male. Now we have well over 100 buildings. Some of them actually still date back to the 60s. We have a workforce of roughly 1,000 people in the summer that are here, and at least 35, maybe even as much as 40% are women. And that's at all levels, from bulldozer operators to research scientists.
McMurdo Station is now the largest community in Antarctica and serves as an advanced logistics hub for the U.S. program. Without its scientific research, penetrating the continent's interior would be near impossible. Many Ohioans conduct research on the continent. Their studies have come a long way since they first started traveling to Antarctica. Their findings could ultimately make a major impact across the globe.
We hope that the work that we're doing here lays the foundation, the groundwork for answering more complex and more detailed questions later on.
Questions OSU professor Barry Lyons has spent more than 30 years gathering data to answer. He works with his team inside the Crary Lab at McMurdo Station to analyze the latest water samples they've collected. The team tests pH and other details before cleaning the containers ready for a fresh set of samples, a task that takes the teams into one of the last untouched frontiers on Earth.
This is one of the dry valleys here in Antarctica, and as the name goes, yeah, there is no snow down here. It's just bare dirt right now. This does qualify as one of the coldest deserts in the world, receiving just a few inches of snow each year.
Researchers are trying to determine how life in this water, blue-green algae and other microorganisms, have evolved over millions of years. Dedicated grad students actually live at this remote camp for months at a time. Their tents sit right next to the glacial streams where they collect the samples. Supplies remain boxed up and weighted down surrounding the camp. The team strives for as little human impact in the valley as possible.
Researchers go to huge lengths to ensure that they don't contaminate the environment, and that even means human waste in buckets here. They separate it out too.
What happens here might be the beginning of what's going to happen globally.
Ohio State University's Dr. Barry Lyons and his team make up just one part of the long-term ecological research project. Here in the dry valleys, more than 10 different disciplines are studied.
Biologists interested in the tiniest organisms in soil called nematodes, to glaciologists who are interested in how glaciers move at timescales of decades and centuries.
All these scientists share their experiments, studies, and ultimately their findings to piece together answers from a complex scientific puzzle affecting multiple disciplines.
The environment is so dynamic that we can't understand how one aspect of the environment or ecosystem changes without knowing the big picture.
And that big picture means looking at how changes here impact everyone on the globe. Research thousands of miles away, and ultimately the answers that follow could change our habits here at home in Ohio.
There are close teleconnections and interrelationships between the changes that are going on in Ohio and what's going on around the world. So we're trying to understand how they're all connected and how they relate on a larger scale to the planet as a whole.
But it all has to start somewhere, and that place, with university professors in the lab and eager assistants in the field, is Antarctica. The research doesn't stop on the ice. Later, we'll go inside the Byrd Polar Research Center on the Ohio State University campus to learn their role in investigating cooler climates. Plus,
all the aircraft that fly from McMurdo, my folks have full hands-on from the moment it hits the ground to the moment that it leaves the station.
men and women behind the scenes meet the Ohioans who oversee everything here, both in the air and on the runway. And we're cooking it up in Antarctica, what it takes to feed more than 1,000 people in the middle of nowhere. But first, ST Knopf from Twitter asks, who was McMurdo Station named after? McMurdo Station is named for the McMurdo Sound in the Ross Sea. That was named for Lieutenant Archibald McMurdo of the HMS Terror. That boat charted the area in 1841 under command of British explorer James Clark Ross. Another Twitter follower, CSL Washington, asks, what is the giant telescope at the South Pole used for? Astronomers use the tool to explore dark energy. It's a concept that might be causing the universe to expand at an accelerated rate. Passengers are packed in tight. Servicemen from New York's 109th Airlift Wing watch over the cabin. Upstairs, pilots navigate a blanket of clouds over the Ross Sea. This C-17 is ready to slide into Pegasus Airfield, a graded runway on a permanent ice shelf some 16 miles from McMurdo Station. Pilots get final clearance to land from air traffic controllers on site in Antarctica. One controller sits directly next to the airfield in a modest tower no more than 3 stories off the ground. The larger command center is back at McMurdo Station. There's no aircraft radar over the continent, so pilots must follow a predetermined route and relay their coordinates in real time. One air traffic controller maintains contact with all helicopters in the air, while the other is able to talk to airplanes over the ice. Once the plane touches down, Ohioan Jeff Huffman takes over.
All the aircraft that fly from McMurdo, my folks have full hands-on from the moment it hits the ground to the moment that it leaves the station.
His team helps load and unload thousands of pounds of cargo for each flight. The team also fills each plane with fuel and gets them ready for their next mission, whether they're flying off the continent or heading to another station in Antarctica.
I have 15 folks that work for me, and they service all of the LC-130s that do all the intercontinental airlift, and they also service the C-17 missions that come in from New Zealand. They do all the ground servicing, marshaling.
Every pilot is briefed by McMurdo's weather forecasters before they leave Pegasus Field for their next destination. These forecasters play a vital role in the daily operations here, but they do it with very few tools. There's not even a Doppler radar on the continent.
The forecasters here, they work with just satellite weather models and then the weather observations from the various outlying camps that are only open for a specific period of time.
The weather observer on duty launches a weather balloon twice a day, which helps glean additional information from the air over McMurdo Station. This big balloon has a mini weather station attached to its base before it's set free and allowed to climb in the sky.
The type of data that we get from it is temperature, dew point, wind speed and direction, and pressure.
While forecasters at McMurdo focus only on this site, they also team up with other meteorologists in South Carolina who monitor the rest of the continent, which is the size of the United States and Mexico combined.
Forecasters in Charleston, they're responsible for the outlying camp forecast. They brief the pilots departing from Christchurch.
Together, the teams of meteorologists, observers, and air traffic controllers work together to keep the US Antarctic program planes flying, full of scientists and cargo. Ohioans also play a big part in other aspects of the Antarctic program. They fill key positions across the continent and bring a slice of the Buckeye State to the ice. From government contractors to scientists, Ohioans are everywhere. The continent seems to have a great sense of community, and it doesn't take long for an OH to find an IO. The latest C-17 military plane arrives with 50 anxious passengers ready to hop off into the white wilderness.
It feels a little bit surreal, like it's not really happening, you know?
This is Megan Alexander's first trip to the ice. She's joining more than 1,000 people at the US Antarctic program's McMurdo Station.
It's like a little town. Everyone wants to help you out. Everyone's giving you directions, telling you where you're at, and you pick it up pretty fast, you know? It's a nice little community.
Nestled in the hills and set beside the frozen Ross Sea, Alexander lives in college-style dorms housed in these brown buildings.
It's communal living. I'm in a dorm with 4 other girls.
She's a government contractor who makes sure all projects, big or small, run on time.
We do all of the scheduling for the projects that run the support.
Other Ohioans get creative to find fellow Buckeyes.
It seems to be an extraordinary amount of Ohioans. The easiest way I've found to spot one is to have candied buckeyes near you, and anywhere you go with a buckeye, we'll draw Ohioans out of the woodwork.
You know, I thought I would get yelled at because of wearing a shirt, but everybody's been, you know, even losing, everybody's been real good.
They eat with everyone else. The galley, where 4 meals are served each day. All waste from the kitchen and the rest of the station must be sorted for ship removal or reused. Nothing can stay behind. This is one of the greenest communities in the world, and for some, a surreal experience.
Me personally, I'm never going to get to go to another planet, you know? This is as close to another planet as you're ever going to get.
Whether she's working, taking a leisurely hike, or enjoying one of McMurdo's 3 bars,
You can't come to Antarctica and not think of it as an adventure.
thousands of miles from home. After a long, hard day in the air or on land, everyone, including these Ohioans, has to eat. But feeding these hungry mouths brings on a whole new set of challenges. Sliced and diced, the portobello mushrooms are ready to cook. Another chef kneads and separates dough while the fryer gets an early morning workout. Trumbull County native and executive sous chef Lou Sabella oversees it all in the kitchen at Antarctica's McMurdo Station.
My job entails running a shift, making menus, menu planning, making sure that everything runs smooth, trying to feed 1,200 people.
Have no doubt, this small army in Antarctica eats well.
We cook like 90% from scratch.
These researchers and government contractors fill their bellies with the satisfying dishes coming from Sabella's kitchen.
250 pounds of pork tenderloin. We have to fillet out, and stuff, and roll, and tie, and it gets pretty elaborate.
While the food is tasty, the culinary challenges are great. Valuable time and coordination with a crew of more than 60 going to making meals happen at the bottom of the earth.
We're prepping 2 days out and trying to have our proteins ready to go. Any given meal probably has around 8 to 12 man hours of prep time going into it.
Ingredients are limited. Sabella has to make these meals last.
All of our meat comes in on a vessel that comes in January, and it is stored in freezer units and down here on station, and that supplies us through our summer season and through the next winter.
Fresh fruits and vegetables are a luxury at McMurdo. You might hit the freshie jackpot once a week if you're lucky.
The freshies, which anything fresh, comes in down in a C-17 from New Zealand, and that supplies us for about a week.
But what about the leftovers? Conservation is key in Antarctica, and that applies to the kitchen as well.
We order in 450 pounds, 500 pounds, and they eat 300 pounds. So then we have to start making steak soups, steak fajitas, and any kind of thing we can do to try and reuse those products.
Food here tastes more like it came from a cruise ship than a school cafeteria, which makes him pretty popular.
What we try to focus on is trying to keep morale up and keep people happy. And food is the biggest way we can do that around here.
After all, the way to a person's heart is through their taste buds. These aren't the only Ohioans hard at work. From Antarctica to here at home, our research center in Ohio makes polar study possible all year long.
The research that we do here really touches on people on a global scale.
The importance of Byrd Polar Research Center at The Ohio State University and the role it plays in Antarctic research. That's next. But first, CMH Realtor from Twitter asks what type of planes are used on the continent. The military and private contractors use several different types of planes. I flew on a C-17 from New Zealand, an LC-130 to the South Pole, and a helicopter in the dry valleys. Another Twitter follower, Dustin Miller, asks, are there religious services in Antarctica? The Chapel of the Snows is at McMurdo Station. This is the third chapel after the previous two burnt down. There are two chaplains who use the chapel, one Catholic and one Protestant. They also use the chapel for social organization meetings during the week. Back at home, a lot of research is conducted at the Byrd Polar Research Center, located on the campus of The Ohio State University. It's here where scientists get a chance to focus on the colder regions of Earth's overall climate system and help students do the same.
The Byrd Polar Research Center, and it was formerly called the Institute of Polar Studies, is really one of the lead institutions in the country and in the world. It's well known worldwide for doing polar research, like I say, both in Greenland and Antarctica.
OSU scientists have led the way in this type of research since 1960.
For 50 years now, scientists and students and professors from OSU have gone not just to Antarctica, but to the Arctic and the high alpine regions around the world and studied the environment, how it's changing.
They've made many significant discoveries along the way. Dr. David Elliott found a dinosaur species which supported the theory of Gondwana, a prehistoric supercontinent.
The importance is that they can be linked to fossils on other continents. And so the only way that you can find the same fossils on multiple continents is if those continents were at one time connected.
Byrd Polar researchers were the first to completely map the Antarctic continent. Buckeyes also broke the gender barrier. Lois Jones led an all-female research team to the ice in 1969.
It was a big deal. I mean, it was really a big deal because until then, women had not been allowed to participate in Antarctic research in the Antarctic.
Graduates of the program remain today's leading voices in polar research.
As my master's and PhD are from Ohio State, and I spent 7 years in Columbus.
Now Julie Pillay is the senior scientist for the glaciology program with the National Science Foundation. The center houses tons of polar specimens for ongoing research. About 1,000 ice core samples sit in their freezer at 30 degrees below zero. The Byrd Center is also more than 24,000 polar rocks in the largest polar rock repository in the world.
We're the only facility like this in the United States, and in terms of lending rock samples to researchers.
In an educational outreach effort, basic geology is taught with a rock box with polar samples sent to any requesting classroom in America. Researchers contribute their knowledge to help teach the next generation while investigating today's science mysteries.
The scientists at Byrd Polar have always worked to ask relevant questions, questions that are important to people and they're relevant to the problems and the issues of the current day.
Researchers have uncovered many mysteries locked into the Antarctic ice sheet over the last 60 years. Ohioans have had a significant contribution. These voices of today are optimistic about the future. The Earth will continue to change, for better or for worse. They hope the next generation of Ohioans join them to solve some of the lingering questions at the bottom of the Earth, questions that ultimately impact us all.
Our scientists here make projections in terms of what the climate system is likely to throw at us, in 20 years, in 100 years, in 200 years. So everyone should be interested in that because that's our common future.
Understanding how the planet responds to climate here, where it's very, very sensitive, is important to understanding climate change as a whole.
Antarctica is key to a number of things in the world environment that might not be obvious.
Virtually every glaciated area on the planet outside the polar regions is losing mass and doing so rapidly. And what are the implications? What will the implications be?
There's something about when you're doing primary science, it's like you're extending the universe of knowledge by a little bit, and even no matter how small a little bit that is, it's your little bit, if you ask the right questions.
Taxpayers have helped further science by investing more than $440 million in the US Antarctic program just last year. This truly is the last unexplored frontier in the world. Scientists believe the money spent will provide answers for the biggest scientific questions of our time, like possible sea level rise, life on Mars, and a changing climate's impact on animals, all from right here at the bottom of the Earth in Antarctica.